Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock on March 3rd. The meeting of the Dublin Sanborn Services District Board of Directors is called to order. Item 2, let's pledge the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 3, roll call, please.
Director Goel,
Present.
Director Duarte,
Here.
Director Bonheater Leopold,
Here.
Vice President Govinda Rao, President Halkett.
I'm here. Okay, item 4, special announcements and activities.
Good evening, President Halkett, members of the board. I do have one announcement this evening. I am pleased to announce the promotion of Corinne Ferreira to the role of Special Assistant to the General Manager. Corinne has almost 19 years of public sector experience after graduating from UC Davis, good college. She started her career as a planner for the town of Danville and then moved over to the city of Hayward and has spent the last 8 years with the district. In her time at DSRSD, Corinne has served in many roles and has worked in some capacity in all of our departments: operations, engineering, finance, and administrative services. She's been project manager for several critical district-wide projects, including previous wastewater and water cost of service studies, and is now working on updating our purchasing program. She is a strong leader with that unique combination of exceptional communication and technical skills. In her new role as Special Assistant to the General Manager, Corinne will oversee a variety of district-wide efforts, including the Asset Management Program, strategic plan, and updates to the district's JPA agreements and other interagency agreements. As a mother of 3 daughters, Corinne says her hobbies are her kids' hobbies and being a busy swim, lacrosse, and Girl Scout parent. So I hope the board will join me in congratulating Corinne on her new role.
Congratulations.
That's awesome. David, good choice. My little son tagged in. He's going to be starting there in the fall. That's great. All right. Is that all the special announcements?
Yes.
All right. Public comment. They're all insiders here. I see no public comments. I'm going to move on. Agenda management.
No recommended changes.
Straight through. All right, consent calendar. Matters listed in this are typically non-controversial. We can move them all at once. There's only one of them. Unless somebody wants to pull something. Going once.
I'll move
twice.
approval.
We get a moval. We get a move. Get a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Well done. All right. Excuse me while I turn the page. Board business. 8A. Accept the fiscal year 2025 annual report on rate stabilization fund reserves and approved fund transfer.
Good evening, President Halkett, members of the board. Tonight we have with us Ms. Christine Chen, and she's our finance supervisor, and she is going to give us a report on the rate stabilization funds. Christine.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, President Halkett and the member of the board. My name is Christine Chen, and I'm here to present to you our Rate Stabilization Fund Reserve Annual Report for fiscal year 2025. Each year, following the completion of the annual audit, staff present to the board with an update of our Rate Stabilization Fund and any recommended transfer adjustment in accordance with the board's adopted financial reserve policy. For fiscal year 2025, both the local wastewater collection and regional wastewater treatment enterprise remains in healthy financial positions. The operation fund reserve fall between the policy target and maximum levels. And the operation and RSF total also fall between the target and maximum reserve level. So as a result, no transfer are recommended for these 2 enterprises. However, for the Water Operation Fund ended in fiscal year 2025 with working capital below the policy target of 4 months to ensure that the water enterprise maintain adequate reserve and complies with policy. Staff recommends transferring 1/4 of the Water Rate Stabilization Fund balance, amounts of $3.8 million, into the Water Operation Fund. This transfer raised the water operation reserve above the minimum requirement and aligns with the long-term planning forecast, including in the 2024 Water Cost of Service Study and the current 10-year financial model. These actions support the district's strategic goal of long-term financial stability and sustainability. There is no physical or budgetary impact associated with this recommendation. If it's approved, the transfer will be reflected in the third quarter financial report. Staff recommends that the board accept the fiscal year 2025 Rate Stabilization Fund report and approve the transfer from the Water RSF to the Water Operation Fund. And the calculation for the transfer is included in the workbook table in the staff report, and that concludes my report. Staff is available for question.
Thank you very much. Any public comment? I have no cards. Anything from
speaker
outside?
cards.
Okay, we're in good shape. Directors, have at it. Any questions, comments?
No.
That's why we have this fund. All right, so I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Make sure those are recorded. You got them? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? None. All right. We're going to go to 8B. Receive presentation on 2025 drinking water audit.
Good evening, President Halkett and members of the board. I'm Dan Gill, DSRSD's Ops Director. I'd like to introduce our presenter for this evening, Dan Pedinicio. He is our Water Wastewater Systems Supervisor overseeing the drinking water system. Dan possesses the highest water distribution license, the D5, and has been with the district for over 8 years, 20 years in total of water industry experience. He is our subject matter expert on our water distribution operation and is recently being recognized by the American Water Works Association with the Operator's Meritorious Service Award for his work in compliance with public health standards, contributions to distribution system maintenance, and developing our operator training program. This award will be presented at the section's annual conference in San Diego next month. He is also participating in the Alameda County Leadership Academy, which is also set to graduate next month. So busy month for Mr. Pedinicio. When you're ready, the floor is yours. You can begin your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, President Halkett, members of the board. Tonight I'll be talking about the drinking water system audit we recently completed last year. The reason why we did this is because with the system growth and changing regulations, district staff conducted a drinking water audit, and Water Quality and Treatment Solutions is the consultant who completed it to ensure our programs meet current requirements, best practices, and customer expectations. This is the first one I've been a part of with new staff as well in the last 8 years that I've been here. It was a good time to kind of take a look. The overview of the presentation, we'll go over water quality, talk about what is monitored, how it's monitored, and talk about the drinking water system audit, the key recommendations he gave us throughout this process, and then last, the water quality control plan. First, this is our drinking water system. Covers 2 cities, the Doherty Valley region of San Ramon and the city of Dublin as depicted in the blue diagram. We purchase all our water from Zone 7. That's about 8.5 million gallons per day we use. There's over 27,000 connections and approximately 100,000 people, and still growing. There's 17 pumping plants, 14 reservoirs, and there's 9 total zones and almost 350 miles of pipe now. So to talk a little bit about the importance of chlorine in the system. So the reason why we have chlorine in the system is to control disease-causing pathogens that can lead to serious illness. Maintaining a measurable chlorine residual throughout the distribution system is not only a regulatory requirement that we must follow, it is also an essential additional barrier of protection. A consistent residual helps prevent contamination throughout the system that can occur, as water moves through the pipelines, through the storage tanks, and other infrastructure. If chlorine residual becomes too low, conditions can develop that allow ammonia-based compounds in the system to undergo nitrification, meaning that converts into ammonia, which can turn into a nitrite and can cause issues with our weekly BAC-T samples that we pull every week. Once nitrification begins, maintaining that chlorine residual becomes increasingly difficult, and tank turnover cannot restore that proper disinfectant levels. In our system, we have it's not a free chlorinated system, it's a chloraminated system, so it's ammonia and chlorine based water. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. So what happens essentially, it fights off the bugs in the system, I guess the nitrites in the system, but also provides a longer lasting rather than free chlorine. So what is monitored in our system? So I just kind of talked about total coliform and E. coli samples. Those are taken on a weekly basis. There's 25 a week that we do throughout our system, throughout those 9 zones, to ensure that we are supplying high water quality. At the same time, we take chlorine residuals to make sure those chlorine residuals are where we want them to be in the system. We also do disinfection byproduct samples. That is a quarterly state regulated sample, and then lead and copper every 3 years at designated sites, mostly in our Western Dublin, kind of in the older homes of Western Dublin. And then fluoride sampling, that is also a regulatory compliance, and we inject fluoride at all 4 of our turnout locations where we receive water from Zone 7. And then also our chloramine booster systems that we have at 2 reservoirs in our system, and I'll kind of talk about those later in the presentation. How it's monitored. So water sampling. We do a lot of water sampling just in the field operations division. We take over 10,000 samples annually throughout our system, our reservoirs, our turnouts, and at our designated sites throughout our system. SCADA operations, which is a big part of what we do, how we control, checking trends at the chemical sites, and setting up the pumps to meet that ideal turnover in the tanks. Reservoir turnover pretty much is new water to old water. So you have a tank that could be at 6 feet. You want to add 10 feet of water. It's a pretty good ratio. You don't want to just continuously top off tanks. So what that means, if you have 16 feet in the tank, you just add 2 feet and you keep doing that consistently, you'll start having nitrification issues. It's a lot of old water in the tank. Next is the chloramine booster systems. So like I said, we have 2 in our system right now. Those help maintain those chlorine levels that we want. It also provides a little bit more water in the tanks, so we don't have to turn them over as frequently as we do our other sites. Data collection. So we do a ton of data collection. We recently, in the last 2 years or 3 years, I would say, we collect all our data and track it through CSAM, which is our CMMS system. We were doing paper for years, and now we finally have that data all, which also made this audit a lot easier. So they collected all our data that we have, also the data from the lab, and also data from Zone 7 as well. Online analyzers. So where we inject chemicals at, we have online analyzers there that are working around the clock to sample the water, making sure we're in compliance with our fluoride. So we're not dosing too high, we're not dosing too low. And those analyzers will send out alarms during the day to staff, but also to our 24-hour on-call operator throughout the night. So if it is start dosing high, we can get that alarm within 60 seconds and shut off the fluoride pump and diagnose the situation, what we're dealing with. Unidirectional and dead end flushing. Dead end flushing is a requirement that we complete annually. We have close to 800 dead ends in the system. Essentially, what a dead end is, if you live in a court, the pipe dead ends there. That water sits there and it gets stagnant. And we have some residents I'll call within a year saying they kind of have odor in their line. We'll go and flush it, and that kind of cleans out the pipe. But that's also in our operation and maintenance plan that we send to the state. So we're required to flush those on an annual basis. And then lastly, the customer water quality complaints. We get maybe a dozen, I'd say a dozen to 20 a year. Usually it's new residents moving into the area, or if we get, some kind of turbidity that comes through zone 7 that goes through our system. We have analyzers for that as well, so we'll catch it, but we'll get calls about that every once in a while. But usually it's taste and odor. Water quality reporting. So there's monthly, quarterly, and annual. Monthly is our big one is our fluoride. So making sure that we're in compliance. We take a daily compliance sample somewhere in the system that's representative to the zone we're in. Quarterly is the disinfection byproducts, and this is all reported to the state. And then the last one's annual consumer confidence report, which is coming out soon, I believe. So we're working on now. So reservoir turnover, I talked about it earlier. So what that is the fill timing. So when we fill the reservoirs at the lowest point in the tank, like I was talking about earlier, but also filling it at night. So when PG&E power is the least expensive, and also when people aren't using water. So when we calculate how much water we need to put in a tank, the calculations are more accurate because no one's pulling off that line as we're sending up the hill. Most people are sleeping at that time, so it makes it easier. Water age is the amount of time it takes for water to travel from the source to the customer. So on the west side of Dublin, imagine getting fresh water from Stagecoach, and then you have to move that water through 4 zones all the way up to Schaefer Ranch. So that's kind of our idea. On a nightly basis, we'll fill from that area on Stagecoach all the way to Schaefer Ranch through all 4 zones. So that's kind of our nightly plan of trying to keep the water quality high. Fill cycle. So we have a 2-day fill cycle. We also have a 3-day fill cycle. 2-day fill cycles are for high demand season, which is from about May to, I would say, October, depending on how hot it is. And then the 3-day cycle is what we're in right now. That's the winter into the springtime. So
that's a turnover for the
yeah.
reservoir.
Yeah, so we'll fill at 9 at night, just say, what's the night? Tuesday, and then we will fill again on Friday night in that specific area. And the calculations put us to where we want to get the most amount of fresh water in the tank, but we also, on Friday night at 9 p.m., we want that tank around 6 to 7 feet in particular zones. Lastly, the pump flow capacity and operational control strategy. That's what we do through SCADA, and we check SCADA daily, and we have tons of alarms on it, so we're always interacting with SCADA. And we have some good trainings that we came out with recently to help out with the rest of the operators on the team. So some of the drinking water audit recommendations I'll dive into right now. This tank right here, this tank does have a pack system. This is above Brigadoon, below Schaefer Ranch. So this is one of our pack systems here. It's Res 3B. So one of the recommendations that WQTS had for us was adding daily free ammonia testing to identify nitrification risk early. So say if zone 7, for whatever reason, has a higher level of free ammonia flowing through our turnouts, that we can catch that before it hits our system and notify them. They also have chemical analyzers on their system to help out as well. Reinstate pH monitoring the distribution system. So that's at our reservoir sites that we go to weekly that serve these lower zones and serve the community. Monitor pH, which is crucial for chemical reactions and corrosion control. And then lastly, test for chlorine and nitrite residuals while completing annual dead end flushing. So we do chlorine testing at our dead end flushing to make sure the levels are good, but also the nitrites to kind of track throughout our system and to have engineering, that data for engineering to kind of take a look at and see where our problem areas are in our system. Next is potable reservoir cleaning. We just completed Doherty Valley Reservoir cleaning last week. Our O&M plan includes a requirement to inspect and clean all storage facilities every 3 years. So how we've kind of divvied it up is we'll be cleaning reservoirs every year, but we'll clean a third of the system every year. So it shrinks the project size down. We clean 5 in a week, which is pretty good. And we do a thorough inspection of it and get the video of it and find issues in it. And some may move up on a CIP project, some may be fine, which most last week looked good. Part of this as well is refine an SOP for inspecting and cleaning storage tanks to include, which we do all this already, is acceptable disinfection procedures, microbiological testing after cleaning, criteria for returning tanks to service, forms for documenting cleaning, inspection, repairs, and water quality results. This is just, locking in on more documentation. And as we clean these reservoirs, we'll start putting them into our CCM system. So we have this data 30 years down the road to kind of see, what the tanks look like every 3 years when we were cleaning them.
And I know you have a complete checklist, a standard operation of how you clean those tanks. Is that something we developed in-house or in concert with industry standards and federal requirements, et cetera?
I think it's a little bit of both, but most of it's driven through like AWWA standards and what they require, and then also state regulations. So that's kind of throughout time. I think that's where it's been built, and then having an SOP to actually physically have is the next step for us. We're already doing it. It's in the RFP when we send it out, kind of what we need done. But having an SOP to kind of complete it and finalize it is the next step.
How long is that tank out of service while it's being cleaned?
So last week, say if there's a tank that has another tank in that zone, we'll take it out of service maybe for a couple hours, and then the other tank is serving the zone. When we cleaned Schaefer Ranch last week, we left it on, but we continue to fill the tank so it doesn't create like a suction at the bottom of the tank for the diver. So, yeah. Next, recommendations for chloramine booster systems. So this is a huge water quality improvement for our system. The 2 sites they chose was Res 4A, which is Schaefer Ranch, and Res 300B. The reason why they chose that, from looking at data, we have a lot of nitrification issues up there, which we have to go out and free chlorinate the tank, which is a lot of time and effort. We probably chlorinate tanks, let's just say maybe a dozen times a year. But it also takes staff, it takes the chlorine to do it, and also it's just very time consuming. So that was the 2 sites they recommended, and this would help increase the minimum storage level, so less turnover would be needed at these sites. You won't have to turn over the tank to battle chlorine residual when you just keep the chlorine residual where you want it. The way it works is it's a 5-to-1 ratio of chlorine to ammonia. You could set it, say, from 2.0 to 2.5. That's kind of ideal what we want in the system. You can just set that system to do that. So every time it goes below 2, it turns itself on. It doses the tank up to 2.5, and then it shuts off. And it will continuously do that through the day. So that's why we're able to keep more water in the tank at those sites. And right now we have one at Res 1A and Res 3B. So the reservoir I showed you, and then Res 1A is off Rhoda. That tank's, we can always have 16 to 26 feet in that tank. So if there is an issue in the system, power outages, it allows more time for us to react in those situations without having to kind of stress and get pump stations going and get generators moving. So before I get in the next slide, this is one of our operators, Jesus Ponce. What he's doing is he's injecting chlorine into a tank. So this is at the Schaefer Ranch reservoir I was talking about. But this is kind of the process. We have our pump, we have our batch tank right there, we have him dumping chlorine in there, and what he's doing is injecting into the fill line into the tank as it's filling. You always want to inject while you're filling, because when the tank's draining, it's going to go back in the neighborhood. So chlorine needs contact time in the tank to kind of react with the chloramine. Free chlorine eventually gets rid of the chloramine, and you go into a free chloramine, and it's a true disinfection of the water tank. So this works 99.9% of the time. But this is what we do instead of having like a chloramine booster system. So the water quality monitoring and control plan, the district monitors water quality in all storage facilities on a weekly basis. Conservation increases as residence time and temperature rise, so that raises a risk for nitrification. So the water control or the water quality monitoring and control plan that he provided for us talks about the nitrification impacts. The most important one, the alerts and action levels. So while our operators are out in the field, when they do samples and pull for chlorine and nitrites, they can have an action level of like, hey, maybe it's time to chlorinate this tank. All our operators know at a certain level, it's all talked about, but we actually have it on paper finally. So this will be a document that will live in field operations for a long time. Also cleaning storage tanks and then the chlorine stability. So the next steps, analyze free ammonia monitoring costs. So we could sample daily with an operator at the site at all our turnout sites, or we can go and look at an online analyzer that is looking at it 24/7. I think we're leaning more towards that, but we'll look at the cost of that and work with instrumentation because it's another piece of equipment that they'll have to maintain. Enhance SOPs and data collection documentation. So that's we have most SOPs for free chlorinating tanks, but we need some for reservoir cleaning and also for our PAC systems, which is the chloramine booster systems. I talked about it. We're already doing it. It's cleaning and inspecting our reservoirs on an annual basis. Evaluate adding chlorine mixing systems. So that'll be us working with engineering and looking at our CIP. I think it's next year. And then continue the high level of water quality for the customers. So one thing I would like to add is this audit essentially validated all our water quality efforts. And Dan Askenizer was a gentleman for WQTS. He was pretty impressed with what we do already and what we continue to do. And just to talk about, weekly back T samples. So when you get a positive sample, it could tell you there's something going on in your system. Last year we had 1. The year before that we had 0. I think we've had a total of 5 in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And in 2016 we had 16. So we've definitely improved our water quality throughout the system. And we have the SOPs and the training, and our operators really enjoy this part of the job. This is kind of a deeper understanding and providing a reliable service to the customers. But yeah, we're all up to date on our compliance and regulations, so it sounded like we passed with flying colors. Presentation, is there any questions?
Well done, thank you. Any public comment? None. All right, directors, have at it.
Answered my question.
It was super thorough. I mean, it's hard to.
Yeah,
Anything, Arun?
just a comment.
Yeah,
I think this is maybe the first one I've been on since I've been here, and so this gave me some good insight. Thank you for sharing that. Question for you, because on the water tanks, we don't fill it all the way, and so when you send in the chlorine, it's only going to be cleansing, so-called, that bottom portion that's having the active water. So when you're actually doing the full cleaning facility, that's when it's kind of taking care of everything else?
Yeah, so last week, that's a good question. Last week we filled the tanks all the way up as high as we can, just below that overflow point, so the divers can get in there, and then we'll maintain it. It'll float, a couple feet here or there, but for the most part, the tank's full. And then when we chlorinate the tanks, I try to get the tanks as high as possible, but we just have to meet that contact time, and also, starting from a low point, because when you're adding chlorine, it helps mix the chlorine inside the tank so the chlorine just doesn't sit at the bottom of the tank. So that's what makes it kind of easier for us of having it at a lower level, and then trying to go as high as possible with it is the goal.
And then regarding, and I don't know if this is really part of this report or not, but I'll go ahead and ask, and if you don't have the answer, that's fine. Life expectancy of these tanks, and then considering, I know last week we talked, or 2 weeks ago, we talked a little bit about what happens during earthquakes and stuff like that. Talk to me a little bit about life expectancy, and then the evaluation of when there's a major incident. How do we secure what notifications are being informed?
That's one I can't answer off the top of my head.
Oh, here you go.
Oh,
Oh,
Okay, very good.
Hello, President Halkett and members of the board. Kind of want to jump in here because it's actually something, as Dan's looking at the water quality and cleaning tanks, my big thing this last week was the survey, the video, asking the diver, what are you seeing in there? Is there anything wrong with the coating, anything structural that I can be talking to Steve about? So that I was definitely on my mind, and that's really helps us give us a life cycle of that tank. I was happy to hear some that I was like Res 4A, which I was concerned about. We do a lot of free chlorination, looked good. So this getting into CSAM, seeing what 3 years from now what that report looks like. Are we seeing more corrosion? Helps us give a timeline for those tanks. But I think with coating and proper maintenance of these tanks, they can last a long time.
And to follow on that, like the coating system should last roughly 20, 30 years. And again, it's with proper maintenance. It helps prolong the life. We have some buried concrete tanks which last much longer than that. And again, these inspections are really helpful. And by the way, when they're in there, if they find like a small spot where the paint could, they have like some underwater epoxy that they can stick on there and fix it, like right there while they're looking at it. So, I've worked here 25 years now, and we've painted several tanks throughout the time that I've worked here, and and they're roughly around 30 years by the time we paint them and coat them. So,
How much of the overall cleaning process do we do in-house, and how much do
So for the actual physical work, we hired a contractor to come in and clean the tanks. Danny and myself are kind of project managers on that, and then we had a consultant come in who professionally looks at the tank while it's being inspected. So they're over the shoulder of whoever's videotaping what the diver's seeing, and they kind of hold them accountable as well to kind of make sure everything's up to code. If there are issues with the tank, that's being documented. Most of the items they saw was there's a like a fill line inside the tank. It's made out of ductile iron, and just over time from chlorine and sitting in water, it's just starts kind of fading away and kind of rusting in some areas. So that was, I think, the only items that they saw. But having that company come in and help out with that is huge for us.
last question. Just like a lot of gas facilities or pipe facilities, do we do any sonar or radar detection against the tank for thinning or fatigue points, cracks?
No, we haven't done anything like that. Again, when they're out there inspecting it, as long as the coating's in good shape, I wouldn't expect there to be any loss of metal. Now, cracks or something like no, it's not something that we have looked at in the past.
very good, Georgine.
What I got out of this report was basically we've been doing everything right. We just want to, they're just recommending that we do it more often and that we, pardon me, document it better, which now that everything seems to be computerized should be relatively easy. Other than that, this was a great report to hear, to know that our system's operating well and good and so thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. No actions required, right? Nothing? All right. We've received the report. Everybody's satisfied. Well done. I now know more about the water system than I knew before, which is always awesome on a Tuesday. So we're going to move on. That dispenses with 8B. We're going to go to our favorite part of the agenda, 9, reports. We're going to do Joint Power Authority and committee reports first. There was a LAVMA board meeting on February 18th, which I attended, but I will let the other director who attended it start.
Oh, geez. And I forgot I need to cover it, so hang on one sec.
I can start then.
All right, please do.
All right, so it was a very straightforward meeting. The two big topics was accepting the audit for the year, which was clean, Georgine, I forget the damn word that's correct. Unqualified. It was an unqualified audit. It was fine. The other topic that was kind of interesting was the solar PPAs the negotiations are kind of grinding a bit. The board did hint to Levi as they're trying to negotiate this out that if the deal is not good, don't do it. We can always come back under better circumstances later. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think there was just one other item, which was updates regarding the San Leandro.
Oh, you took him to the woodshed.
Yeah, of
All
course
right.
I would. So we did hone in on some issues regarding construction contract and deliverable, and we did want to make sure staff is holding to the letter of the law and following up with the contractor. I believe the contractor has provided the board members some responses. We'll wait to hear more about that as we continue. But as you guys all know, my background is contracting, and I don't like it when we get taken advantage of or we got a little bit of non-action happening on our side. So I called it out, and immediately there was some responsiveness. I'll just leave it at that.
Well done. All right, that dispenses LAVMA. We'll go to 9A2, submittal of written reports for days of service, events attended by directors. I know several of us went to the Dublin State of the City. I'll go last. Georgie, do you want to start? Or
Sure. As usual, or unfortunately, because we didn't buy a table, we were way in the back. So it was very difficult to see the screen with all the numbers on it, which I ran into Sherry or Doctor Who after the presentation and said, you need to do something about the font they're using so we can read it in the back of the room. But I always have trouble understanding all of her statistics. I'm still struggling with that and probably will for a while or forever. So I don't have too many statistics, but basically 25,766 households. They have a $36 million surplus this year, revenue of $138 million and expenses of $102. So we're in pretty good shape. That's all I have.
well done. Any other attendees? I think you were there.
Yeah, I was there as well, so I'll go ahead and do my due diligence. Adding on to what Director Von Heater Leopold said, they really focused on the fact that the city's in a strong and stable position. They opened up 3 new parks recently, 20 capital projects coming forward in the coming year, and that safety is a top priority with crime rates low and the use of technology. I think a lot of the prudence of good financial stability has been in the past, but as what was not addressed was what is on the looming front is as we go through a city of build out, the surplus will decline and the practices of the way we were won't be the practices of the way we're going to be in the future. So that's something that's not said, and the only reason why I can say that, and maybe Director Von Heater Leopold can as well, we're past council members.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very true. They did a study last year, I believe it was, and maybe it was the year before, that indicated by the year 2030 they were going to be short. So I hate to see them cut services, but that's usually what happens.
Well done. Thank you. I also attended. Speech was good. The city's finances, at least in the next 5 years, look awesome. There was one little factoid that just struck me and actually made me very proud of Dublin. What do we have? 20,000 households or so? That's it?
25,000.
Half the households speak a language other than English at home. That's pretty cool. It's a good city. I like it. Otherwise, I had a very good seat. I was seated between 2 Zone 7 directors, so I got to spend some quality time with our friends. I was nice, I promise, and I think I moved the ball forward a little bit. Anyway, good event. I guess we have State of the City San Ramon tomorrow, so it's State of the City season. Well done. All right. Any other meetings? Nothing. Agenda items. Anybody got anything for the hopper? Hearing nothing, we'll go on to 9B, staff reports. Go for it.
Staff has received a few inquiries from the board regarding the filing of 700 forms this year that are due on April 1st. I want to thank Nicole Genzali, who has been relentless with the FPCC. It's been confusing because now the emails are directly sent by the FPCC. I think she sorted it out, and all of the board members should have received their email. If you have not, please do contact Nicole. But again, she has been relentless in trying to work on this.
Well done, Nicole. And yes, I have gotten mine.
So, clarifying question on that one. For the adjacent jurisdictions, we just go ahead and put it as additional agencies, like we did in the hard copy before.
We know we had to file separate ones.
Are you referring to an expanded statement?
Yep. Where you go ahead and list all the agencies.
I would hate to advise you on that because this is being now handled by the FPPC. Our filings is, and you may be filing with the FPPC system for a JPA,
right,
but our JPAs actually do differ in their systems. So I would have to take probably some questions offline to further address that.
Okay.
Please contact her if you have some questions. And then, as President Halkett mentioned, this is a very busy month. So just running through our list, we do have the San Ramon State of the City. A number of board members are attending that tomorrow. The 14th is the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Information has been sent out to the board members on that event. March 19th, we have the State of the City for Pleasanton. And that evening, we have the Alameda County Special Districts Association. Again, a number of board members are signed up for that one. And then on March 26th, we have the Contra Costa Special Districts Association dinner. And lastly, lots happening. A closed session will be in the GM conference room.
Thank you so much. All right. That dispenses with 9B. We're going to go to 10. I have 2 closed sessions. Mr. Cody, how much do I need to read here?
I think just the fact that if you want me to do it, I will go ahead. For 10A, we'll be entering into a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. There are no additional attendees, and 10B is also a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to the same government code, and also no additional attendees.
Thank you very much. All right, and then turn your microphones off, please. And for the public, when we come back, if something to report, I will do it. we're fine.
We're live.
Okay, we are back in open session. Closed session has concluded. There were no reportable actions taken in closed session. And so we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:25.